Nina.
Bye.
Great. We had, John, we had some conversation before about you might need to leave after a while. Is that going to happen?
He's gonna.
Okay.
He's gonna update us.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. We're going to give a couple of minutes for everyone to settle in, and then we're going to get, we're done with our executive session, and we will start up with the public session in a couple of minutes. Okay. Here we are. We start our meetings with resident concerns. If anybody has some concerns they want to speak to us about, especially things that aren't on the agenda, we'd love to hear about them. I'm going to hold people to about 2 minutes so that we can get through things. But if you need more than 2 minutes, let me know. We can work it out. So I see at least one person in real life right here. So why don't you go ahead?
Good evening, everyone. I might need a little bit more than 2 minutes.
Okay.
Madeline Cruz, 6 Station Way. Housing and Climate Justice for Acton, HCJA, is an Acton group which represents many apartment dwellers in Acton, such as tenants and condo residents. In regard to the matter of 92 Willow Street, our board of directors have voted unanimously to make the following statement. ACJA believes that neither the Board of Health, Select Board, or any entity of the town of Acton should use their power to condemn a property or structure when an eviction is in process, unless there is a timely and imminent risk to the human life, such as a building collapsing. The reason is to protect tenants from homelessness. We also believe that if the town resorts to condemn a property in which there is an open eviction court case, as we understand is the case in 92 Willow Street, the town should then be responsible for ensuring that the landlord finds and pays for sufficient alternative housing for the tenants until the eviction case resolves. The town and the select board has expressed an interest in advising efforts to address housing insecurity in Acton. In support of your interest in doing so, we hope that you will do all you can to help protect Jean and William Thompson, the tenants currently living at 92 Willow. We understand that the matter having to do with health concerns or violations are being dealt with in an eviction case as the case proceeds through the court process, and the Acton Board of Health can also play a productive role using the tools that it has to ensure that landlords keep his tenants safe. But one thing of town should never sanction or tolerate is a landlord who may be already negligent keeping up his responsibilities under a lease to run and end and run around the court process and use the condemnation process to accomplish his goals without providing his tenants the due process they deserve in the court case. Condemning 92 Willow will also create a chilling effect, discouraging tenants from complaining about building violations out of fear that the landlord, in bad faith, would weaponize a tenant's complaint back against them by using the tenant's very complaint as ammunition to expel the tenant from their home. Weaponizing a tenant's complaint in this way is an outrageous act which should not be condoned or ruled on favor by the town. For this reason, HCJA strongly believes that, one, the town should not condemn 92 Willow Street. Rather, the town should allow the existing eviction case to run its normal course to resolve with finality matters dealing with health and safety and how they relate to the matter of occupancy. With the tenants continuing to reside in the household, the Board of Health can or should do all in its power to enforce that the health and safety code, but should not take action that would force the tenants to leave their residence because in this case of 92 Willow, there is not an imminent risk to human life. In fact, the only possible risk to human life would be if the town rules that the Thompsons can no longer reside in that residence. Two, if the town does not condemn 92 Willow Street as part of the order, the town should become responsible for ensuring that the landlord finds and pays for sufficient alternative housing for the tenants until the eviction case resolves. HCJA urges you to keep the Thompsons in their apartment. Call for the Board of Health to enforce the health and safety codes in any way that truly helps the tenant and allow the eviction case to proceed so that the housing judge can fairly hear both sides of the matter of health, safety, and occupancy and rule according to the law. And this right here is just a reminder why Article 45 was so important that it passed. And I hope that each and every single one of you continues to value tenants in this town because we need your voices and the bylaws that you create to protect us. This shouldn't be happening to those poor people. You have to do better, and I expect better, and I expect no favoritism because the owner, from what I was told, is on a board or committee, and that is unacceptable. I urge you to do the best that you can in this matter to protect those residents. They deserve for you to protect them.
Thank you.
Hi, Kimberly Hurwitz, Minot Ave. I'm just referring to the Subaru dealership issue tonight. I just want to make sure that the Select Board checks in to see if there are any additional emails that came in regarding this matter. Yeah, sorry. I just want to make sure that the emails that might have come in today or even this evening as the meeting is being held will be counted in the record towards your votes. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Jean. Can you press the little button there?
This one?
Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect. You got it.
My name is Jean Thompson. My husband Bill is here with me. I may need a few extra minutes. I have an email that I sent to several people in town, including the Board of Health, Cheryl Ball, never received a single response, okay? Health Director Cheryl Ball, I'm here about 92 Willow Street. It took you over 3 weeks, 1 phone call and 2 follow-up emails to respond to my request to check the humidity in our unit, and you respond with an apology and quote, at Mass General Law. Perhaps you should refresh yourself with Mass General Law regarding response time and requirements for health departments and inspectors. I can't say any of it has been followed in our tenant situation with Sam Bajwa, Vice Chair of Acton's Planning Board. When we believed our department had your department had our health and safety as priority, we placed stock in Inspector Dow's judgment call, an assertion about chronic dampness until the humidifiers provided by the landlord and the humidistats I purchased all showed a consistent humidity level of less than 40%. This low humidity level is in no way chronic dampness, nor does it allow for the growth of mold or mildew. In fact, the only mold or mildew is under the kitchen sink from a leaky faucet that was written as a violation in February and remains unfixed. That is why I asked you to come check the humidity level over 3 weeks ago. As of now, it's 4 weeks. Is there a problem with you backing up the inspector's judgment call? The Board of Health in the town of Acton have been placed in a difficult position by the Health Department. It appears the vote on the vacate order was done with inaccuracies of fact, easily proven or disproven. They made a detrimental vote that was unsubstantiated and I can prove to be inaccurate. Therefore, a vote on it should be nullified and at the very least be reheard if not dismissed outright. Remember, the board ordered the humidifiers placed on site to remedy a situation that was Inspector Dow's judgment call. Our confidence in Inspector Dow and the Health Department has lessened tremendously considering only some violations were documented on his first visit, more on his second visit, and there are still more he missed writing up. This is in spite of everything being pointed out to him on his first visit. The checklist from the Massachusetts State Health Department was offered to him with all 30+ violations noted, but he refused it, even though taking it is suggested, if not required. To quote you when you asked about this other requirements of health inspectors of the Mass General Law, we haven't done it that way in years. Then Inspector Dow told Jean, well, you moved in there with it like that, in reference to the below grade issue. Blame the victim, like we were supposed to know the apartment was always illegal and condemnable. Why didn't the town know when they gave Sam Bajwa 4 building permits when there were only 3 legal units? The town recently had to have a warrant to make the health department follow one specific state health department law and guideline. One has to wonder what other the health department is not adhering to, perhaps the planning department. Mass General Law appears to be more of a suggestion to the departments of Acton. Your department has not even deigned to contact us to perform a reinspection to see if any violations were fixed. Of the 28 original documented violations dating back to February 2nd, 2023, not a single one has been fixed. Many somehow disappeared during and after the Board of Health meeting and do not appear on the violations list anymore. The actual violations are over 30, but some were dismissed outright by the inspector. Heat is required in all rooms until June 15th, but it's okay with you, we've done without it in our primary living space. The times I called your office recently to arrange a reinspection, Inspector Dow was out sick. And then again, he was out sick and would be for the rest of the week. I know a message was taken. Yes, I did give up trying because of your department's obvious disinterest in assisting us and being the apparent enforcement arm of our landlord, Sam Bajwa, so he can raise these buildings and build 4 multi-million-dollar condominiums. 4 units where there are 3 legal and 1 illegal unit at 9092 Willow Street. Ask the tax assessor's office. Ask the water district. If I found this out with minimal research, then why didn't Acton Town employees? Sam Bajwa's email to Kristen Gouchard. Don't forward this email I'm forwarding to you to anyone else. We'll talk about it on the phone later. Sure, that sounds above board and not at all like a violation of open meeting laws. That was during his planning process. And I'm sorry, this was a smarmy remark. Can you say undue enrichment? You also have not addressed my email pertaining to how to appeal the board's decision to vacate. We have made good faith efforts to find suitable and affordable housing, but have been unable to do so. The board stated if that was the case, we'd be eligible to appeal the vacate order for additional time needed. You also made note of it in one of your emails, and the vacate date is fast approaching. How are we to appeal if you are not forthcoming with the information? I'm not sure an appeal is even necessary given the complex, ambiguous wording and misinformation of the motion voted on by the board. The current ongoing eviction court case between us and our landlord, Sam Bajwa. The town of Acton has inserted itself into an ongoing eviction case between us and our landlord, adding tremendously to an almost unbearable emotional and physical situation. Are you even aware that the town orders us to vacate as required to provide relocation assistance and a relocation payment for moving expenses? Why did that never come up? I don't believe sending the same list multiple times of apartments to call qualifies as assistance. You are aware we are seniors with physical hardships and emotional difficulties. Your department and the town of Acton have taken a hands-off position in assisting us in any way, shape, or form. Everything you have done is to assist Sam Bajwa to circumvent due process in an ongoing eviction case. Allowing us to live like this without the simplest violation of fix seems punitive to us. Our first call to you was February 2nd, 2023. And in spite of the egregious violations, a visit was not made for over a week. You should read the MGL time guidelines about that. It's now June 4th, 2023, 122 days. 3 of those original violations were 5 days to fix violations, still not done, and you haven't even contacted us for a reinspection. As renters, I have to say the town of Acton has treated us abysmally. The last 3 years of experience with town employees and officials have been a true hardship and a lesson in cronyism. Excuse me, I'm sorry, that I was really upset when I wrote that. The information gleaned from Freedom of Information requests showed just how deep it runs. Documentation is quite extensive and revealing. For example, you, Health Director Ball, knew of our situation of no heat in our primary room in 2020, and also that this was an illegal apartment and turned a blind eye. Since we had heat in other rooms, the apartment couldn't be that illegal. We were encouraged by Laura Duchamp to not have the inspector come out because it would cause a bigger problem. Funding for fixing the heat was withdrawn after Sam Bajwa became involved. We were told by Laura it was a landlord issue, not for the town to get involved. We realized only in hindsight our landlord was already a member of the planning board. You knew the illegal apartment situation here 3 years ago, yet chose to do nothing until it benefited Sam. You said at the Board of Health meeting you didn't know this apartment was illegal, but your emails from 3 years ago tell a different story. Favoritism for a select few. Shame on any of you who perpetrated or perpetuated this. We are considering our options, and they are clear and limited given the approach of Acton. This chicanery may need to be kicked up the ladder for state regulators to scrutinize. I have assembled a package that supports everything I said, documents everything I said. What I stated here is only the tip of the iceberg. In closing, we have this to say, my husband and I. To those who believe or pass on what's been put out about us about not paying rent for 5 to 10 years, depending on who's smearing us, there are canceled checks and most notably documentations and receipts of cash payments made for this illegal apartment to our landlord, Sam Bajwa. Libel and slander are actionable, and truth is an absolute defense. Those violations have not been fixed. I have fallen twice. One time, I ripped my MCL in my knee. And the other day, I tripped on a bad kitchen floor, and I bruised myself badly. I'm on a cane because of this. Now, I have other violations in that house, and no one seems to be interested in helping us out. The only correspondence I get from the health department is about the condemnation and the appeal and nothing else. And I've asked her, what's going on with reinspection? Nothing. And when I spoke with her today about it, she said, well, now that the building is condemned, he doesn't have to fix anything. But the Board of Health ordered him in April to fix these things. Who's telling the truth? Who is handling this? Because we're on the wrong end of this stick, and it's bad. You know, we were so happy in Acton. We really were. You know, your first responders are above par with their abilities and their interest and what they are capable of. Because we had to have them in our house several times while my husband had cancer. And they never once made us feel that we were putting upon them okay? So I just want you to know that the experience with them and then the experience with the food pantry, Donna and those people, they are wonderful. So this is what I expected when I called the health department, and instead, I got a hard way to go and a condemnation and a see you later. I'm sorry, I won't take up any more of your time. I really appreciate you hearing us out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's finish off here. Oh, thank you. Matt, I think there's a couple of people online who would like to talk.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The first one is a call-in user. They can let us know who they are, where they're from. It'd be appreciated.
Hi, this is Tara from over here in Mass Ave. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I am so sorry that Jean and William have experienced so much difficulty. I can't be sure who is at fault for what, since I know so many people involved and they seem like nice behaved people, and I haven't seen such behavior before, but I have reviewed the materials and I'm pretty shocked. It looks pretty clear that the owner of 92 will applied and achieved this special permit to demolish the units for a very profitable housing development and to achieve the increase in the density bonus. He claims that he already had a number of units on the parcel, but upon achieving the permit, then he claimed that the unit was not lawful. So I agree with what Jean says, and I'm very disturbed. It seems like a bait and switch, and even if she's upset and is using strong language, the town owes people to take care of these matters. I support what HCJA said in their statement, and I urge the town not to be party in an attempt to subvert due process. Please do what you can to ensure the town keeps them in their home or finds a housing and ensures that the landlord pays for it, because you shouldn't subvert the eviction process with a condemnation using. Goodness gracious! Like it's hard for me to even speak on this because it's so shocking. Thank you for letting me speak, and thank you HCJA for stepping up and making such an important statement. Thank you.
Thank you. There's another person online.
Yes, Dan Klein. Dan, you should be able to speak.
Dan Klein, Old Stone Brook. Is this a time I can make a comment on the auto dealership?
Dan, if you could wait, that would be better. We're going to have a
I'd be
big.
happy to.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. Anyone else online? No. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Okay, chair update. A couple things. We do get occasional emails about the Kmart lot owned by the Stop and Shop Corporation, so I just wanted to give a brief update. The plan that Stop and Shop has been talking with the planning staff about involves a Stop and Shop on that site and an additional two different additional 3,000 square foot retail locations, spaces right next door. What's new is that they've talked with staff and created some tentative plans for an interior sidewalk as well, to get from the Mass Ave entrance over to the Main Street entrance. And so it would be an internal sidewalk, which would be a little safer for people. So people have, been wondering about that lot for a while. That seems to be the direction that that's headed in. The other thing we've gotten a couple emails about is fireworks. So indeed, it is true that we're not having fireworks this year at Nara Park. We did set aside some money for fireworks, but it turned out that we were unable to get a vendor to provide fireworks at any reasonable date, reasonably close to July 4th. So we're saving that money for future events, perhaps future fireworks. With the so that's the news there. I think that's all I wanted to cover in the chair update. So, Mr. Manager, manager's update?
Thank you. I just wanted to announce that the River Street Dam removal project is getting started. We were able to secure funding, and we went out to bid, and I'm very excited that that is moving forward. It's an important project for the community, and thanks to the team that's been working on that internally and with a lot of volunteers as well. The Town Center Road project is nearly complete. It looks pretty good. There'll be some permanent pavement markings, hopefully, if it stops raining, out there soon. And we continue to try to do some paving all over town and keeping the place looking good. We had our first Pride Festival last weekend, over the weekend, or earlier this month. It was a big success. It was a rainy weekend, but the rain held out for the festival. We also had a drag performance the night before, Friday evening, and had over 400 people attended that. And it was a success as well. So that's exciting. The rail trail opening that was scheduled for this week is canceled, anyone that was going to go to that. And also, we have some big announcements for staffing. Many people saw that I've appointed James Cogan to be our new police chief. He started in that role earlier this month. So congratulations to him, and he's going to be great for the community. Also, I wanted to mention that Fire Chief Robert Hart retired yesterday. And as of today, Anita Arnhem is our interim fire chief. So exciting for her, and she's going to do a great job. And that's all. Thank you.
There may be members who want to have an update time. Dean.
Yeah, just a thank you to town staff. The Lions Club Town Fair came back after a long hiatus due to the pandemic. We just got through it last night. The crowds were great. We think the revenue that's going to be generated for charitable purposes will probably match or exceed what we had before the pandemic. About 50% of all of those charitable proceeds will be spent locally, and the rest will go to regional and national and international charities. So, on behalf of the Lions Club, we certainly want to thank everybody from the public who attended, and specifically to the town, Highway Department, Recreation, Health, the town manager's office. They're all very helpful in getting this event back and running again. So, thank you. That's it.
Fran?
I just wanted to quickly say how much fun the Pride Festival was on Saturday. It was great to see so many different faces from different, you know, there was a table from the library, there was different congregations in town representing, and it was just a really feel-good festival with good music too. And I also wanted to talk about Juneteenth, which happened on Monday. And I did attend with Alyssa not a celebration, but at Robin's house in Concord. They had a celebration per se. They had jazz playing. I don't know if anyone has been to the Robin's house. It was a dwelling where the abolitionist Ellen Garrison lived. And I was just hoping that in the future that Acton can align with Concord and in the historical aspect and celebrate Juneteenth.
David? Okay. Alyssa?
Thank you. I just wanted to announce that I have scheduled a second office hours session at the Memorial Library next door in the solarium for this Wednesday morning between 10 and noon. The solarium is just to the left of the main entrance, so I wanted to have an opportunity to announce it in public for all of those who are not on Facebook, and I will try during my term to vary the hours, so some weekdays, some weekends, some evenings, but this will be Wednesday from 10 to noon, and hope to see some folks there.
Thank you. Now I'm going to read this notice of public hearing and talk a little bit about how the process is going to go. I see a lot of faces here who I seem to match up with emails that we've gotten too. So hope many of you are here to listen in and participate in this hearing. The Acton Select Board is going to hold a public hearing now, continued from May 22nd in this hearing room, and on the application of MAG Real Estate Holdings, Acton LLC, for a site plan special permit under zoning bylaws sections 10.4 and 6.7.9. This is for the property at 1 and 5 Nagog Park and 599 Great Road to redevelop the property into an automobile dealership. And that is the announcement. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to hear a brief bit from planning staff about what it means to have a site plan special permit, so that we're clear on, as a board, about what the standards are for approving or not approving of this kind of project. We're going to get a brief introduction from Dean, who's been the select person assigned to this. Then we're going to hear a presentation from the proponents. Then there's going to be questions from, or comments from the board, and then we're going to have an extensive public comment period. It's the main business of the evening. We do have some agenda items after that, though, so I am going to be managing the time to make sure we have time for the rest of the stuff we need to get done as well. Mr. Manager, who do we get to hear from tonight?
Planning Director Kristen Guichard is here.
Hi, good evening, Select Board members. So just a little overview of site plan review. I know some of you are new to the board, some of you have been around for a while. So site plan review is different than a special permit, different than subdivisions. The interesting thing about site plan review is it's not specifically noted in Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, which is the State Zoning Act. But it is basically established as a process through case law. And site plan review is a process in Acton in which the Select Board oversee, which is why this site plan is in front of you tonight. And it is granted, it is that way because the zoning bylaw that the town adopted has set it up that way. So basically what it does is it allows the Select Board to review, potentially impose conditions, and on specific things like the layout of a specific project relating to a site and how a site is laid out in terms of parking, setbacks, dimensional regulations, things that are set forth in the bylaw that are clear and predictable. When an underlying use is allowed as of right under zoning, the board's review authority is confined to the site plan review. So again, talking about the dimensional regulations that are set forth in the bylaw. And that's really to make sure that all of those regulations are met prior to the issuance of a building permit. And are there any questions? Okay.
Oh, and thanks also for having you wrote this up as well, so we had a chance to study it. So appreciate that. Dean, you met with planning this morning. Why don't you tell us about what you learned?
Okay, so as everyone here knows, the applicant came in over a month ago with some very preliminary plans, generated a great deal of discussion. There was some preliminary staff review that was done of those first set of plans. The hearing was continued, and in the intervening time, the applicants come back with a...
Dean, there's some issue.
We just lost our virtual audience. Do you mind just pausing for a moment so they can come back? Sorry about that. I don't know where they went, but I just don't want to have there be an interruption in the hearing.
Mm-hmm.
The meeting itself is still running.
Okay. Right, but they can't hear or see what's being said, so I just want to get back in business here. Perfect timing, yeah.
Yes, we have a cool spinning circle with lines coming out of it on one screen, and we have this light going back and forth on the speaker. It's very exciting. Yeah. Yeah, it can never hurt to stop and restart. This is always the first line of defense against any hardware and software problem issue. Yeah, that's right. See, already something new is happening. It seems to be asking us to tap the controller to start.
It's just rebooting.
Okay.
All right, we're back.
Okay. So the applicant asked for a continuance. They have come back with a new set of plans, or at least a concept. In the intervening time, I know there were discussions between the applicant and town staff. I know the applicant also met with various groups of neighbors, at least one walkthrough that I attended as well, looking at the site. So what is going to be discussed right now is considerably different than what was shown initially, and I'll let the applicant describe that for you. Whatever happens tonight, I know the applicant would like to get input from the public and from the staff. I've got a list of issues that I've come up with, plus some, certainly a very good memo here from the Kayla Sauer, our assistant planner, with lists of issues that have to be dealt with, and that'll certainly be part of the record. I think what's going to end up happening is that this process will be continued, and we can discuss that later on, but obviously, with the fact that there's not a full plan set available yet of what's being proposed, and the amount of time it's going to take staff to review it and send it through a third-party reviewer, I think we will have eaten up most of the summer, and I will, at the proper time, recommend we continue until sometime, I'm thinking probably September. So some of the issues that I've seen, I will raise towards the end of my comments after we've seen the presentation. The other thing that I think is important for everyone to understand is that there are lots of things that we as select board members or members of the public might like to see on the site. We might prefer to see restaurants and small shops as opposed to car dealerships, but it is an allowed use in that particular district, and the select board is quite constrained as to what sort of things we could prohibit. I think a lot of the work that you'll see that we'll end up doing with the site plan review process is sort of working around the edges of the project, but it's probably, if the applicant decides to continue on with the car dealership, there's really no practical way that that can be stopped by this board. So that's sort of the intro. And the other thing, I don't know what the latest count is. I think I've personally read probably 80 emails. They all pretty much have the same themes. We certainly know what the public is feeling out there. But as I said, there are some real limitations as to the actions that the select board can take in this matter. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Mr. Manager, do you know which of the applicants we have to talk to us tonight?
I believe Attorney Bobrowski's here representing the team.
Might want to pull up a chair. There seems to be just one chair there. Oh, but if you're going to stand, then you're all set. Okay, perfect. And I'm going to want you to turn on that microphone there. You press the little button at the middle of the microphone. There you go.
Thank you.
And before you get started, I'd love to understand an estimate roughly of how long you want to speak so I can manage the time appropriately.
I'm going to be very brief. I think David will take as long as you have questions, but I think his initial presentation will be on the order of 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get all those names again, absolutely.
May I?
Please.
Mark Bobrowski, for the record, my office is in Damon Mill in Concord. I represent the McGovern Auto Group, and we're here this evening, as the board's been discussing, for site plan approval special permit for a proposed new car dealership to be located in Nagog Park. We did apply for a site plan special permit in February. I believe that the board was reorganizing at that time, reconstituting itself, so with the urging of your planning director, we asked for a continuance. But that wasn't a bad thing as far as we were concerned. It did give us time to reconsider the proposal, and with the assistance of the planning director and her staff and the peer review that we received early on, it became clear to us that we could make a better plan out of this. Also instrumental was a meeting that we had with the association in April, I believe it was, and there were quite a few people there live and more by Zoom. They let us have an earful, and we took it to heart for the most part. Finally, the manager asked us to have an informal conversation with him one afternoon. We came in to do that, to have that discussion. And again, it was impressed upon us that there was consideration to be had for proceeding incrementally, shall we say. So the right-hand side of the site, I believe that's the east side of the site, is the first part of the site that we would like to redevelop. The original plan had the west side of the site, equal-sized building, also reconfiguration of the parking area, landscaping. We've essentially pulled that from the plan at this point in time. David Kelly, sitting to my left here, will go into greater detail. We think that we've accomplished some objectives other than a car dealership, which is that the existing businesses out there still will have a place to remain and do business. We think we've got room for all 4 of the restaurants out there, depending upon how willing they are to move from one building to the remaining existing building on the left-hand side. With that, I'll let David go into the details, and of course, we're here to answer any questions that the board may have. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and the public. My name is David Kelly with Kelly Engineering Group, and I just want to make sure we can put the slides up before I start, if that's possible.
We have a very high success rate in resolving technical problems.
I can tell.
Yeah.
I've seen it already.
Yeah.
Great, thank you
Two
so
for two.
much. Maybe you could enlarge that, Chris. Thank you. Thanks so much. Again, Mr. Chair, David Kelly, Kelly Engineering Group. I'm pleased to be here to present the project this evening. As introduced a number of times, it's changed since you saw the plans firstly. And so I'm going to show you a little bit about what was there originally or originally proposed, but also take you through, more importantly, what we're currently proposing. And so I'll start at the very beginning. You all know the property far better than I do. I know everybody behind me certainly knows the property better than I do. But this is an aerial photograph of it. And if you were to look at that aerial photograph, you'll see the Nagog Woods residences on the right-hand side. We'll call that the east. And in the rear, there's an office building, a part of the park. There's a number of other office buildings and other uses back there, as you know. I can try. I might be just a little far away from it. Okay, does that help? I'm pleased to do that. I'll shut this. Is this better for everybody? Okay, thank you. I'll try to speak into the microphone. So this is the property. The green outline shows the boundary of the property, and as you can see on the bottom is Great Road. On the right side, east side is Nagog Woods. We spoke about that. The north side, the rear of the property, is the rest of the park. And the gray area in the front is Little Nagog Pond. Nagog Pond, the main Nagog Pond, is across the road on the south side of this plan. And as you can see today, we have essentially 5 existing structures. Starting in the rear, we have the main plaza. And I'm just going to give you a few pieces of data that might be helpful as we go along. The main plaza is about 32,000 square feet currently. We'll call the building on the right towards the rear, closest to Nagog Woods, the east building. That's about 6,600 square feet. There's a small office that's located essentially in the parking lot. You can see it in the center of this screen, a little difficult to see from the distance, but again, I think you all know the property is about 1,500 square feet. There's a second office, which is at the bottom of the screen on the left, just above the pond. And that's about 1,800 square feet. And then there's a standalone restaurant, Frolic and Detour, which I think everybody knows well, and that's about 7,800 square feet. So the total square footage on the property today is 50,500 plus or minus. If you were to count the parking spaces that you see on this plan, you'd find that there are approximately 328 spaces on the property today. So let me just take you quickly through it just for the board's recollection of the property. As you come off of the main road and then head up on Nagog Road, you'll reach an intersection. Currently, you'll take a right at that intersection. You will in the proposal as well, but it'll be reconfigured, and I'll show you that in a moment. As you take a right into the plaza, you'll see that small office building on the right side, the 1,800 square foot. If you continue further down, you'll get to the restaurant. You'll see that at the bottom of the page. There are then 2 connections off of that driveway into the plaza, and you can see there's a main center driveway, and then there's a driveway to the east. If you were to continue up Nagog Road, you'd see a second driveway which takes you along the front of the current plaza. There's a wetland system associated with Nagog Pond, and just for your reference, the project will require a Conservation Commission order of conditions. We've met with the Conservation Commission already. They were pleased with the project for the reasons I'll explain in a moment, but primarily upgraded stormwater management and a reduction in impervious area, particularly impervious area close to Nagog Pond. We asked them to continue their hearing until this board is closer to a decision so that we can make sure everybody's looking at the same plans. Along the east side, you can see very clearly on this plan that there's a large landscaped buffer area between us and our neighbors in Nagog Woods. And it's pretty clearly shown on this plan. It's a mix of evergreens and deciduous, with more deciduous trees than there are evergreen. But in summer in particular, it forms a thick buffer between the two uses. Just to give you another couple of statistics on this plan, which will be important in a moment, and we did discuss this with our neighbors at a preliminary limits are pulled further away, with the remaining area being heavily vegetated to add some additional buffer. Kristen, could I get the second slide, please? Thank you. This is just a very simple representation of what you would have seen had you studied the plans originally filed. And you can see that there was a two-building scenario proposed here. The so-called Subaru dealership, which will be a relocated dealership from the other side of town, is on the right side of this plan, the east side. It's about 30,000 square feet plus or minus as represented on this plan. And you'll see that on the left side, the west side plan, and you'll see that on the left side, the west side, there's a second dealership which had not been determined as to who that would be, but it was proposed on this plan. And the remaining buildings would be the smaller office building at the bottom of the page, more clearly shown on this plan, which is that 1,800 square foot restaurant, and the Frolic and Detour restaurant building, which is 7,800 square feet. We did propose two phases at the time. Phase one being everything to the right side of that center driveway. Phase two being the facility yet to be determined. What became clear during our discussions with the neighbors, the comments from folks in town, from staff, was that the phase one project was a better project. And it allowed the portions of the plaza to remain as described by Attorney Bobrowski for the purpose of restaurants and our other retail. So if I could flip just quickly to the next one, Kristen, thank you very much. So this is a zoomed out representation, very same scale, very same orientation as the plan you saw a moment ago. And this represents what we're proposing currently, which is just the so-called phase one, the former phase one. It's no longer a phase one. I'm just using that term because that's what it was originally proposed. It's the project. And the project includes the construction of that one automotive facility that will essentially transplant a facility from the other side of town to this location. It'll be a brand new, modern facility that you're familiar with. All new automotive dealerships. We've worked with Mr. McGovern and his firm many, many times, and other firms similar, as you can see, throughout the Commonwealth and the country. The automotive dealerships require a modern, clean finish for their customers and the experience they're going to have. So I'm going to take you through this plan, which is what we're currently proposing. So the first thing you'll notice as you go in Nagog Park Road is that intersection that is the first intersection we talked about a moment ago that would take you to the right and, if you like, to the restaurants. If you were to look carefully between the two, you'd see that that's reconfigured a little bit. The driveway that's there today is very poorly designed. It's designed in a way that a driver needs to look over their shoulder as they're making the turn. It's very confusing. So we're going to clean up that intersection, and there's actually a zoomed in version in a moment we can look at, but thank you, that's helpful, Kristen. So that intersection will be improved with the traffic engineer's direction to perform more of a typical intersection that you might expect, where it's stop controlled and Nagog Park Road would have the right of way. But if we continue into the site, we'll take that right, and then you'll come to the driveway that's going to be the primary driveway to the facility. It's a little further from the intersection than the previous location to provide a little more stacking room and safety at that intersection. And once you enter that driveway, the plaza will remain in its current condition on the left side with some small modifications that I'll describe in a moment. On the right side will be everything that's being redone, the construction of the automotive dealership and the the reconstruction of the parking area that serves that facility. And you would also notice, and I mentioned a moment ago, that buffer that's on the right side has been increased. So the total parking count is reduced slightly. I know there's reference to that in the staff report. But we've been able to reconfigure this while keeping essentially the same amount of parking spaces in a way that's more efficient and has better circulation than what's out there, more safer circulation, and it provides a larger buffer to our neighbors on the east side. The project at its closest point to our neighbors will now be 159 feet instead of 117 feet to the building. So we think that'll end up being a benefit to our neighbors. The pavement will be removed closest to the wetlands. So if you were to look on the bottom right side, though, this board doesn't have purview over the wetlands. This is one of the things that the Conservation Commission appreciated. The white dashed line in the right corner, this represents the buffer zone to the wetlands. If you look carefully, there's a circle over towards the right side. We're pulling pavement out in there. That new green area that you see in the upper left quadrant of that circle is the pavement that gets removed from the buffer zone. So that obviously was a benefit that the commission felt was valuable. The project will have a new stormwater management system in entirety on the newly redeveloped portion of the property, which is the east side, as we've described. And on the west side, it will receive stormwater quality, which would be the primary concern when it comes to stormwater management, especially for an existing facility. The total project will fully conform to the DEP standards for stormwater management and the Town of Acton standards, their MS4 permit, their stormwater permit. And we'll end up with a reduction in runoff, an enhancement in water quality, and an enhancement in recharge to the aquifer. The lighting as proposed on the project will be downward facing, low-level LED fixtures that can, the benefit of LED fixtures, in addition to having a nicer lighting color, if you like, can be adjusted so that they're reduced in intensity at night to just safety levels. Unlike the old lighting that we're used to, where the levels were the levels and they were on all night, that's not what will happen here. We did meet with our neighbors relative to the existing buffer on that east side, and this plan just shows, and maybe Chris at his point, we could zoom in on the next sheet, which is the next sheet, the zoomed in version. That's great, thank you. So on that right side, that east side, you'll see a lot of new plantings, or primarily evergreen plantings, which our landscape architect felt would be the best benefit to our neighbors who have a fairly good deciduous buffer already. And this plan just shows them graphically, but we also have a full set of plans that we'll be providing to the board that details the landscaping and how it will be installed. Relative to other sort of technical items, the site will not change much from a grading standpoint. It's actually quite flat, so there won't be much earth moving in order to make this project work. For your information, the grade drops, as you might expect, from the rear of the site down towards Nagog Pond. We're aware of comments that were received relative to the stormwater system from your water department, which we will certainly address in the next set of detailed plans. While we're on the proposed project, we did provide the board and the town with a traffic study by MDM Transportation. That traffic study analyzed both what we called phase one at the time and the total project as originally proposed, which is not going to happen at this point. And the conclusion in that traffic study was that on a daily basis, it was done by a combination of actual counts on the ground, and those counts were confirmed with ITE, Institute of Traffic Engineers, and the determination was that the traffic would be reduced as a result of this project. From our experience and from their experience and ITE standards, traffic generation for automotive dealerships is lower than restaurants and plazas, retail plaza. I think that's pretty obvious to all of us. We're aware that there was a staff review done, a preliminary staff review, as you pointed out, and we acknowledge that we really only revised these plans after a lot of input that we received. And we've just provided, as you pointed out, Mr. Chair, with a couple of sheets of that plan so that everybody can understand what we're proposing. What we intend to do after this evening with comments you have and any comments, new comments that we receive from our neighbors is to provide you with a full set of site development plans. I'll note that we did receive a peer review on the original proposed project, and what our goal is to address all applicable comments in that, understanding that we're going to be providing them with a new plan set, even though it's a subset of what was there before proposed. We understand that there will be comments that they'll probably come back with, or we'll do our best to address what we know are comments that were common to the new plan and the old plan. We're looking, as was pointed out by a number of people, for a flexible parking permit as well, plan permit as well. And Kristen, if you wouldn't mind just showing the next sheet just for a moment, I just want to explain to the board just on a very high level what we're trying to do here. So the bylaw is very extensive relative to landscaping, and we acknowledge that and we understand it. But it also says that, if you can do a better project and for various reasons and still meet minimum standards of 5% interior landscaping and a minimum of 10 feet setback from the roadway, then the board could issue the various waivers of the regular bylaw to allow what hopefully will be considered to be a better project. And just for your information, board members, this plan represents what your bylaw would ask us to do for a project like this if we followed every component of it for interior, cells of parking lots and everything. And I think what is obvious pretty quickly is that while the bylaw is well-intentioned and in those departments, it's more intended for a small parking lot, probably a 25 or 50 car parking lot. This is a bigger one, as we noted. There's 322 parking spaces proposed in this project. And what we are showing on this plan is the various landscaping and cells that would check the box of what would be required. What we hope you will agree is that this plan doesn't really make a lot of sense for this particular site and the type of parking lot and the type of use. And what's pretty obvious from what I showed you a moment ago and what you see on this plan is that if we were to follow the bylaw to the letter of the regulation, you'll see that, firstly, that parking lot on the right side would have to slide across to meet the same number of parking spaces and the landscaping requirements that are spread out much further beyond what we're proposing, which we don't think is a good idea. It certainly wouldn't provide the buffer that was proposed. It might reduce it. Circulation is much better, we feel, in the plan we're proposed. I think that's pretty obvious. You can see there are some dead-end parking lots, long distance for people to have to travel from access doors, and a much more difficult parking lot to maneuver for both trucks, cars, and pedestrians. So our hope is that when we list those waivers and provide more data, that you would support what we're asking for here, which we think is a better project for the town and certainly for the project itself. Lastly, if we have one more slide, I'll just put it up quickly. We don't have an architect here to discuss it in more detail. It's the building elevation. It's a very simple elevation, as you can see in this plan. But it gives you a feel for what's proposed for that building now on the right side, the east side, the Subaru dealership. What I will note is we've met with the Design Review Board on March 30. They had a number of comments, and what we wanted to do is wait until we get a little further along with the board and the input, and then go back to them and address all of their comments. But a lot of their comments related to landscaping, lighting, things that we know about and can address and will address. So that's an overall summary, Mr. Chair. I know you've got a busy night. You explained that earlier, but I think that hits all the main points, and I'm certainly here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I know there's going to be some questions and comments from the board, and then we want to leave plenty of time for the public comments too, so you have all the input that you might need. Why don't I just start at one end and go to the other? Dean, do you have comments, questions? Oh, sorry. I was inviting the board to make comments, and then I'm going to invite the public to make comments, and I'm starting, I'm going to go from left to right here, starting with Mr. Dean Charter.
Okay, I've got about 7 comments here. Some of them do appear in the staff report. Some of them are ones that I've worked out, but I can just sort of list them through the sorts of things that I think we're going to need to see. Obviously, as you noted, we're going to need to see a full plan set. I know those are in preparation. We need to verify the developable site area. There's quite a bit of calculations that need to be done on that, and the folks in the planning department want to be able to review all those. Part of that, there are some existing access easements to go across the property. We need to know what the status of those access easements is going to be and how that might impact your developable site area. A couple of concerns about sidewalks. I think there's been a request, I think it's a reasonable one, about extending the sidewalk from the entrance driveway into Nagog Park all along down to the Frolic and Detour site. And the possibility that can be done without going into some of the landscaped areas, so you don't incur the wrath of the Conservation Commission. Also, extending the sidewalk on the west side of the site along Nagog Park. There are a number of existing sidewalks there, but there's some disconnected pieces. As noted, Design Review Board does want to talk with you folks again, and hopefully that'll happen. And the other issue is the west side of the site that you're not going to be tackling at this point. I think we all need to have some understanding exactly what kind of upgrades might be reasonable in that parking lot on the west side of the site. As far as upgrades to stormwater management, design of parking cells, that sort of thing. So if that's going to be touched at all. So that's something we'd like to hear about. And then as noted before, I think because of the time it's going to take for all this paperwork to go back and forth, and the fact that many members of the public are not going to be available during the summer, and the Select Board usually has a reduced schedule in August, I'm thinking we might be looking towards a September opportunity to come back with all this. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Fran?
I have a quick comment, and that has nothing to do with the plans today, but is the dealership in Powder Mill planning to move fully into this location?
As far as we know.
That's correct, and we didn't introduce, but John Crandall, representing McGovern, is here this evening. Matt McGovern himself couldn't be here. He's at a dealership convention. But the answer is yes.
So on that powder mill site, does McGovern occupy both sides of the street? Is that my understanding?
My understanding is yes. John might
Yeah.
want to weigh in exactly, but I'm quite sure that's the case.
Because I do know some, workers have to like run across the street back and
Yes.
forth. Yeah.
No longer if we
Thank you.
get here.
Yep.
Thank you.
I wonder if we could go back to the parking plan. I'd love to see where the bicycle parking is.
So that's a comment in the staff report, in the original staff report, and so we'll locate that more accurately, but we understand it has to be protected and away from the parking spaces. And your bylaw asks for it to be on a paved area. We tend not to do that. Most other communities that are usually they're built into the landscaping. But we expect that that canopied area on the left side will be where we'll install the vehicle. So if you look at that area just to the left of the service area.
Thank you. Another question is, I wonder if you can do a short narrative on how the existing building can fit all the businesses and how that might work.
So I have to ask John Crandall to comment on that. John
Great.
has been working really hard with the tenants in the existing facility, particularly the restaurant folks, to see how we can fit them here or elsewhere in the community in a way that works for them and McGovern. Thanks, John.
Hi, John Crandall, McGovern Automotive Group. So your question is how the existing NAGOG tenants will work with the dealership?
Yes, and how, if you can, narrate or show or describe how they would fit.
Sure. Yes, the building will be broken off where Maiori Restaurant is, and it'll go from there all the way down to Crossroads. That'll remain exactly the same as it is today, and the parking configuration will remain the same as well for that section. So it should operate just like it does today.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have right now. Thanks.
Hello, I just wanted to say I appreciate the changes to the project since the original plans and the efforts to accommodate the other businesses in the plaza. I have quite a few issues, in no particular order. My first question are deliveries expected at night to the dealership?
John might comment on the operations of that. I know it's very limited and it's the answer is no.
So you won't mind a condition that says there can't be deliveries, say, between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m.?
I definitely would say after 10 p.m. into probably 5:30 a.m. because people do start delivering early.
Okay.
To beat the traffic.
Okay. So my second thing is currently Nagog Woods residents can walk to Nagog Park Drive, across the plaza. And it's a pretty reasonable walk to walk across the shopping plaza. To my thinking, it's much more awkward to walk across either in front of or behind of the dealership. I would like to see some kind of sanctioned walkway from Nagog Woods to Nagog Park Drive. I mean, a sidewalk that can be next to the building, but is intended for people to walk from one side of the property to the other, and know how this relates to the existing access easements. I'll take comments, but I'd like to see that in the future plans.
I beg your pardon. I can certainly respond to that. So at the bottom right, you'll see there's actually an existing walkway that comes through the woods. Staff has asked that we extend the walkway between Nagog Park Road and and essentially the restaurant, Frolic and Detour, which you can see on the right-hand side that Kristen is pointing out. So that whole section will be connected, and that would allow people actually to get onto Nagog Park Road and out to the other roads. In addition, from that new intersection we're creating on the new driveway, so again, head in off Nagog Park Road and take the left, which is the new main driveway into the plaza. There's a walkway proposed that will take you in there to the front of the building. So I think we're going to cover easy pedestrian access compared to what's there today.
So I'll say that right now, there is an informal walkway that comes from, it's kind of close to the back of the new building.
Okay.
Right, I think if you've been on the site, you probably are very familiar with that. There's an informal walkway. I'd like to see some connection there. I don't know whether even in this view, there's a double dotted line section that's just behind the building. Is that one of the access easements? And so I appreciate the walkway at the front of the property, but I'd also like to see a walkway to accommodate access for the residents of Nagog Woods to the other side of the plaza. It can be on either side of I just want you guys to say that you expect pedestrians to walk on the front of the building or the back of the building, and that's okay with you, right? I don't want them to feel awkward if they want to walk over to go to the restaurant or the Dollar Tree or something like that. So I'd just like to see that in the future plans.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. I mean, as I look at it, I'm subject, obviously, to the operations, because I know that right side of the building is sort of parts delivery and a more sort of utilitarian component of the building. But it looks like we could extend a walkway if everybody's agreeable down along that green space next to the pavement on the right side of this plan. And then there's a whole sidewalk system that travels across the front of the building that could take you there and across. It would probably be the safest, easiest route.
That's fine, as long as the residents know that they're allowed to do that. And I, as Selectman Charter said, I'd be interested to know where the access easements are and whether that double dotted line thing that's behind the building is one of those access easements. I'm also trying to assess the lighting. I appreciate your comments on the lighting earlier, that the poles are lower and they're all downward fixtures. You talked about color. I'll note that the town has a lighting bylaw that includes no lights cooler than 3,000 K. But also I'm trying to assess the level of overall light. I mean, I understand currently, I've been on the site many times, that the current lights shine in all sorts of directions and are, annoyingly bright in some directions. But there are many, many more fixtures, and I'm interested to see the final plan here. In my count, and maybe I'm wrong, but I looked at the lighting plan in the original plan, and there was something like 40 poles with 80 lights. And I am concerned about the level of light. Just the total amount of light. I'm not quite sure how to assess the overall level of light, but I will be concerned about that in the final plan. So I'll just throw that out there. I know you have EV chargers in your plan, including fast EV chargers, and I really appreciate that. Can you tell me how many chargers in total, both fast and level 2?
I'm not sure exactly. I can pull the plans out when we're talking, but the industry is turning in that direction, as you know. So I think the simple answer was as many as are needed ultimately.
Yes, that was one of my concerns, since the industry is going there. I couldn't actually find that number in the original plans too. So if that is detailed in the final plans, that's fine with me.
We did apply to the state for 2 high-power chargers, 180 kWs, to be along Nagog Park Drive, accessible to the public. And then we'll have our own chargers for our needs, both inside and outside as well.
Right, I really appreciate the fast charger, and thank you for making that available to the public. I mean, that's extremely useful. appreciate the extension of the landscape buffer on the east side. I'm interested in the final landscaping plan to know what kind of plants are going there. In particular, most of the trees that are behind that are deciduous trees. There are some conifers, but most of them are deciduous trees. And so I'm concerned about the visual barrier, again, along with the lights, especially in the winter. I would appreciate trees that are mostly conifers probably and set out in a way that forms a visual barrier, especially in the winter. Can you tell me about again, because we don't have complete plans, what kind of HVAC system you're proposing in the building?
I'm not sure we have that fully documented at this point, but it'll obviously be a modern system designed to meet sound levels, if that's the question of DEP. I don't have the specs. I know John was working with one of the consultants, and John and his team. But I'm not. Is that in particular the question, the noise aspect?
So no, it's actually
Visibility.
use of fossil fuels, and we strongly encourage. We have a policy to encourage the use of make all electric new buildings, some people have changed their plans. We're on our way, and we're one of the, provided we get very final approval, town meeting approved this spring to be one of the 10 pilot communities in the Commonwealth to pilot a program to allow us to regulate the use of fossil fuels. I would strongly encourage that this building be all electric and that it not use any natural gas or other burn any. I mean, it doesn't make sense in this time to build a building that's going to last 50 years that burns fossil fuels, right? We don't want to use fossil fuels in 10 or 15 years. So, if you tell me the building's only going to last 10 years, maybe. But, if the building's going to last more than 10 years, it shouldn't have fossil fuels in it. So, right at the moment, we can't regulate that, but we strongly encourage you to do that. And finally, my last question is, and this follows on to Selectwoman Fran Arsenal's question, what will happen with the property on Powder Mill Road?
We are just a tenant in that building, so somebody else may come along and lease it after us, but we are.
So I'm specifically wondering whether we are moving a car dealership or adding a car dealership.
We are moving our car dealership.
No, I understand what you're doing, but I meant net for the town.
Yeah,
right?
that I can't speak to what will be there next.
So you're just looking for any retail tenant on that property? Or
We don't own the building, so.
Oh, you're just a tenant. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we are literally a tenant there, and that's one of the reasons to purchase this property is so we become an
I'm sorry,
owner.
my mistake. I thought you own the building and that you were renting it out. No, okay, thank you.
No, thank you.
That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Alyssa?
Thank you. I noted in the memo from the planning staff that they are wanting the lot to be brought into compliance with design standards, and I was wondering if anybody could speak to whether or not you're amenable to that.
So is this the question relating to the existing portion of the site, the west side of the site? We will be complying, the project in its entirety, subject to the waivers that we would need from the bylaw for interior landscaping, et cetera, will comply in its entirety with the bylaw.
Kristen, does that satisfy, I'm not clear on the difference between design standards and the bylaw. Does that satisfy your request?
Yes, that is the question, so long as the select board grants the waivers they're requesting.
Okay, great. So we had a plan that you didn't show tonight of the parking that I think outlines the location of the dumpsters to the west of the dealership. And I'm wondering if those can be located behind the building or somewhere a little further away from the residents at Nagog? Because during the site walk with the landscape architect, residents were discussing the giant crash after the dumpsters are emptied and then dropped back down on the pavement. Can you point out where they are now and maybe a possible different location?
So obviously the plan that we proposed originally is different than this. So we'll provide that information when we come back to you.
Sorry,
And we understand the comment.
I'm looking at, you didn't show
Yeah.
it tonight, but
Yeah.
it is this plan, and it's just a black and white version, and it
Right.
looks like the dumpsters are marked here.
Okay. And
So that's what I'm asking.
Okay.
I'm not talking about the original
Okay.
plan.
I mean, clearly we're going to locate them in an area that has the least impact to our
Okay.
neighbors.
Great. And I'm also curious about the parking that's proposed for behind the two buildings. Is that for, it looks like there's driveway access around where Crossroads is now. Is that for the restaurant, or is that for staff or vehicles for the dealership?
So that's to provide both emergency access around the back of the building and access for parts vehicles that are going to drop the parts off on the right side in the parts receiving facility, or continue around the building. It's a narrow driveway that will provide emergency access as well as access to the back of the building. As you probably noted in the original plan, that driveway continued all the way to the east side. It does not anymore because we're keeping that, the west side, we're keeping the west side in its current condition.
So there won't be parking
No, there's no
spaces
parking
behind the
proposed.
building?
There's no
Okay.
parking behind the building.
Okay.
In the parking behind the existing restaurants and stores that are staying would be the same access to do deliveries that it is used for now.
Okay.
Occasionally, someone will park back there, like there was a car there today. I was out there, but I don't know what business he was at, but it's not a parking area back there.
Okay. The small office building that is to the west of the restaurant, Frolic and Detour, is that currently occupied or empty? Empty, okay. Are there plans to demolish it or keep it, find a tenant?
The one that used to be a bank years ago, that one is going to be taken down.
The one in the
But the one that's
center?
along the water,
Yep.
the office building, that is Huntington Learning Center will be moving there.
Oh, okay.
So they will be occupying the first floor.
And is the parking for that building to the east, or do you anticipate that people might park in the middle lot? 'Cause what I'm concerned about is that there's a nice crosswalk from the parking on the east side to Frolic and Detour, but there isn't a crosswalk to that office building.
So there's actually 5 parking spaces there.
Okay.
There was a comment, presumably sufficient for a small office space like this, I suppose, to the extent that they have overflow at some rare occasion, they'll park in the other parking lot. But there's enough spaces there for your average business day. There was a comment relative to making sure that one of those is handicapped, because it's not, and that's a
Okay.
part of the plan that will be submitted. It has been submitted and will be refined.
All right, and I just have a couple additional questions. The traffic study, you mentioned that car dealerships generate fewer vehicle trips than restaurants, and I'm just wondering, the traffic study was done when there were 2 dealerships proposed, and now some of the restaurants are going to stay. So is there another traffic study to determine the vehicle trips planned?
So I had noted earlier that what happened was in that original report, they actually did 2 phases. They did the phase 1, which is
Okay.
actually what this is.
Yep.
And the phase 2. And so we're asking them to just clean it up for the records so that their report now only represents that phase 1 essentially. And and the conclusion will be the same, that it
All
is
right,
a
that makes
reduction
sense.
in traffic. I think it's a pretty obvious one if you take down a plaza and you put an automotive facility.
And the the vehicle trips includes test drives? Because everybody who comes in might test drive at least one vehicle. That's one
Yeah, I
trip
mean-
in and out additional.
Yeah, so we rely on the Institute of Traffic Engineers who determine average expectations for dealerships throughout the country. And it's the standard which is used in the profession and by the state as well. So presumably that includes employees, visitors, test drives, et cetera.
Just one more comment. You mentioned that you're going to go back to the design review board and answer their concerns and questions. But I just wanted to take the opportunity to point a couple out that resonated with me. In their memo, it said the applicant said there's no intent to meet LEED or such standards. So I'd like that to be answered for them. That concerns me. And they also were interested in seeing complete drawings of all sides of the buildings and also the entranceway. They mentioned a stone wall. So is that in your plan to discuss with them when you go back?
That's correct. We just needed to determine what the project was first, and it's obviously changed since we saw them last. So yeah, those additional elevations are being prepared, and they'll be hopefully considered to be attractive. And I believe the latest landscape plans already incorporate the stone wall. We think it's a good idea. It'll make it look really, really nice.
Okay. And just one more comment. I was surprised to learn from the memo from the Concord Public Works that the Little Nagog Pond and the larger Nagog Pond are hydrologically connected. I thought that they were not, but I know that they're interested in seeing information and plans regarding stormwater. So I don't know if that comes directly from you to them or through the planning department, but I just want to make sure that someone is clearly addressing those concerns.
Yeah, we'll address in writing their comments. We actually met with them. I didn't, but somebody from our office did, and John was there and Mark was there. We met, and we were surprised the hydraulically connected comment. That was new to us. We actually didn't see that letter till today. I hadn't realized that the comments are just posted on your website, and we didn't actually get a copy of it ourselves directly, but now we know, and we'll make sure we keep an eye on everything. But we'll address that as well. It may be by groundwater connected. It's not physically connected, clearly. There's no outlet, no connection between the two physically, no pipe, no other means of connection. And relative to their concerns, we will address those for water quality and maintenance of facility and concerns with hazardous spills and the like.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, board members. Now we're going to transition to public comment. Maybe we can free up that podium. Thanks. And I would say, I guess a couple of requests. One is keeping your comments to 2 minutes would be good. I'll attempt to flag you as you get close to 2 minutes, but I don't have my cool little egg timers here, so it's going to be approximate. And also, since there's a great number of you, I guess I would encourage you to not need to repeat what other people have already said. As Dean was remembering about 80 letters. The last time I checked, we're now up to about 100 letters. So we do have a significant degree of input about basic concerns. But now this is a modified plan, so there might be entirely new concerns. So looking forward to hearing all the public input. The floor is open.
Hi, Carla Heiler, 531 Old Stonebrook. I want to thank the McGovern Group for listening to community input, but I will say you have not earned my trust yet. I would like to point out to the board that I came to a meeting recently where the town of Acton has hired an engineering study for a master plan for Great Road. And they were unaware of the dealership, how they wanted to reconfigure the entrance. In fact, the consultant from there was saying, well, what we'd like to do is put a roundabout in here to slow down the traffic coming in from Littleton, create more friendly space for bike riders and pedestrians, and gave a very good presentation. I said, well, how does this fit in with the dealership's plans? And they were like, what dealership? So you guys have a communication problem, and you need to address that. Because if they want to put a roundabout in there, or there's a master plan for Great Road, I feel that McGovern Auto Dealership ought to know about that, by the way, because I don't know if you guys knew about that. So that's number one. Number two, I have a real problem with statements such as, well, we're quite constrained, and this can't be stopped by the board. Why did you waste 5 of my Monday evenings if you can't do anything about this? I'm just saying that's a really inconsiderate statement to everybody in this room who has given their time and input. Either you can do something or you can't. And if you can't, you should have let us know up front. That's a big, big piece of issue. I'm also concerned because I've learned that 25% of Acton's population apparently lives along Great Road. How does this affect us? How does this affect the possibility of putting in that protected bike lane and pedestrian sidewalk all the way down the road? How is that going to be affected by all this? Because I'm not hearing those concerns addressed. I am also very concerned that we're talking about putting in a car dealership. Car dealerships are on the way out. Let's get real. Like 'em or hate 'em, Elon Musk changed that by putting Tesla dealerships as a display in malls. People buy online. People show up into a dealership for a test drive, but it's not like I'm cruising up and down Great Road looking for a car dealership. I did all the research on my car that I currently drive online. I called dealerships ahead of time to make sure they had the car available for test drive. And then I actually drove down to Hanover to get, because I drive a red VW Bug convertible. And I'm sorry, that's just the best car ever. So I'm gonna say it right there.
We're at a little over 2 minutes, so if
Okay,
you can
but I
bring the
just wanted to
remarks
put
a
that,
close.
and also, I also want to point out that McGovern Group also owns the Chrysler dealership down the street now. They have a new kind of used car lot attached to that, it seems like. I really don't need an auto mile. If I wanted an auto mile, I'd move to Norwood. I really don't want Great Road to turn into an auto mile. The people in Nagog Plaza have supported us for years. They supported us through the pandemic. And I really want to make sure that they are continued to be supported in this process. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Miles Fidelman, also 531 Old Stone Brook, at a butter. And not speaking for the board, but I am on the Association 3 board, which represents just about half the owners at Nagog. I want to make two observations. The first is to what Carla already said, the comments about your hands being tied and what you can do. Now, I went back and I reviewed the bylaws. And the bylaw says the select board may grant a site plan special permit, not must. There's not a list. And in other parts of the ordinance, there are things that must be met for a permit to be issued. In the case of a site plan special permit, it must be, to the degree reasonable, must be consistent with the master plan. Now, we don't have a current master plan. And what passes from one is whatever development plan was filed for Nagog Park back in the day. And that says it's a shopping mall. And it's essentially a village center. It gets a lot of traffic from Nagog, from Avalon, from all the office parks. And I would say that an auto dealership is simply not consistent with what passes for a master plan. Secondly, the ordinance requires that the site plan protect the neighborhood and the town against seriously detrimental or offensive uses on the site. And what I would suggest is that we are talking about a major change of use to a facility that plays a major role in the community. And there's potential negative impact to abutters in terms of property values, convenience. A large format auto dealership certainly is not in keeping with a residential area. And so for all of those reasons, I'd like to suggest that the concept of an auto dealership on that site is fatally flawed to begin with, and that this thing should be sent back to the drawing board. Now, certainly the mall is not performing well, and there is certainly an opportunity to redevelop that mall so it's a lot more, generates more tax revenue, generates more traffic, say like the area around Trader Joe. And if that happened, or even better, West Acton Village, when the Village Works was put in. That kind of redevelopment of what is already a central business area would seem to make a lot of sense. And McGovern could be a hero by doing that. And if it happened to have a low-format auto dealer on the property, fine. We seem to be accumulating these auto showrooms that are small and do not garish, and are more in keeping with the way people are buying autos these days.
I need to mention that you've gotten about, you're about 3 minutes into your 2 minutes.
Now I will just finish and say, maybe a rental fleet or a zip car fleet in lieu of a showroom. And so I want to say, right off the bat, kill this thing. Send it back to the drawing board. And I think McGovern should stop playing villain here and redevelop the place. Be a hero.
Thank you.
I'm Carolyn Kiley at 11 Parkland Lane in Quail Ridge. I was concerned tonight to hear, which was new to me, that this was a as-of-right development, especially when the attorney started out by saying that they filed a site plan special permit in February. Because a site plan special permit, one of the criteria is this appropriate for the neighborhood, which you've been hearing it clearly is not. But now we've been told tonight that it's site plan review only. And you've heard 100 comments that say about the same thing, that this isn't appropriate for the site. So I'm going to ask you to be bold and put a moratorium on approvals and changes in use and have the town undergo a comprehensive planning process for 2A and what we, the residents of Acton, need along 2A. And then adjust the planning bylaws to address the results of the comprehensive planning process. Because what we have here is not a comprehensive plan, not what we want, not something that you folks have put your stamp on. This is how we, the selectmen, want to shape Acton in the future. And I'm not a municipal lawyer, but I understand that towns have put moratoriums on things while they undergo a comprehensive planning process. And I'd really like you to be bold and consider such a moratorium and plan, truly plan. You're planning for the roads. Let's plan for what we want along those roads. And it was also sad to hear tonight that we can't regulate sustainability because Acton's sustainability policy and plan was put forth with significant fanfare. We've got a sustainability office within the town. The Acton Board of Selectmen have a sustainability policy from December of 2018, and we have a climate action plan. And the sustainability mission on the website is to pursue and promote actions that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I won't keep reading, I know I'm short on time. But I don't see how this proposal in any way, shape, or form meets the town's idea of sustainability for the future. It was great to hear you folks asking for LEED and green certified and no fossil fuels, but it's a Subaru dealership. You've got gas cars going in and out of there for as long as that Subaru dealership is there. We can't even lose one restaurant in town. We're losing restaurants all over. I understand you've got the water issue down 2A and septic along 2A, so you can't develop them there. We really need, what Miles said, that site could be used to the true benefit of the town. And so in closing, just, we all know, one other thing. We all know that the existing building there, Saving now, is very old. So Plan B, or what is it, Phase 2, is probably likely in the near future. So we don't want another auto dealership there. Please consider a moratorium on a change in use and permits along Green Acton, I like Green Acton, along Great Road and abutting properties, and let you folks lead how you want that strip of road to look versus the developers decide how our town is going to look and what we're going to have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Kimberly Hurwitz, Minot Avenue. I just have a couple of comments to the Select Board. The first is, it was just touched on slightly. So this new plan encompasses Phase 1, but McGovern owns the entire property. How long does the left side of the property stay as is? How long do we have restaurants there? How long do we have shops there before McGovern says, oh, it's falling apart and it's not really working and we're losing tenants and we need to redevelop this and we really think it's in our best interest to put in another car dealership. Second, if you drive a little further down Great Road into Littleton and you look at the Toyota dealership, that used to be part of Acton and is mostly empty now, down on Great Road are part of Acton. If you drive down and look at the Toyota dealership, there are parking lots, acres of parking spaces, empty, 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 empty. You're talking about adding parking spaces. And to me, that's a travesty when there is all of this asphalt that's empty. So I think we need to, if we're even going to consider this, look at the actual number of necessary parking spaces. Excuse me. And the third thing is I'm really disappointed that a group with resources of the magnitude of the McGovern Group is not interested in LEED certification and is not interested in electrically managing the building and possibly relying on fossil fuels. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I'm Alan Marr. I own the building at 125 Nagog Park, which is up the hill behind this place. I assume, I'm not a citizen of Acton, but I'm a property owner, so I assume I can speak. Thank you. I want to first say I'm a civil engineer. I do all kinds of big infrastructure. It's really nice to see this process going on, to listening to input and developers trying to address community concerns. So I put my comments out, not necessarily for or against, but just concerns that, which I will put in writing. I have several of them, so I'll just go through and not expect an answer. I was really surprised that you don't have the authority to say no. My question was who, and has this decision already been made? So it's really more now about conditions. And those conditions, what are they? Traffic study has been done, but with what assumptions? I understand data coming from the traffic center. I believe I heard that they would use average. It's usually good practice to use average plus some delta. Traffic is already really a problem in that area. I know I drive it every day. And so I'm not saying it can't be addressed, but it certainly needs to be considered, and the impacts potentially of more traffic coming out considered. I wonder if there is the possibility that something like the service center could be oriented in a way that it was fast, speedy, or something that just drew a lot more traffic than average statistics would indicate. And if such, some conditions should be put on an upside of traffic change from this development. I think I heard at some point that all the existing businesses would be accommodated, but I don't see how the answer that we were given addresses that. I think I heard two would be accommodated, Crossroads and the dollar store, but there are two or three other stores there, and I wonder what's going to be accommodating those. There's two more restaurants, I think. And a couple of other considerations. I don't know what the water and wastewater system is for that particular plaza, but I know for Nagog Park right now it's challenged. We're already faced with some real issues on wastewater treatment. And so I think there ought to be some planning to make sure that we're not putting a burden on others or creating an unexpected situation. And then I'm wondering if, what does happen down the road? The woman said earlier, not to repeat her, but more, can some condition be put on the approval that phase 2 as a car place doesn't happen, and that it be used more to other beneficial uses for our community? When I bought that building, I was really intrigued by that whole setting and how we had restaurants for my staff to go have lunch, go have dinner. This kind of stuff could be very disruptive to other companies in the center like us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah Melezova, 375 Old Beaver Brook, and president of the Nagog Woods Community Court Board. And although no one in our community wants this car dealership next door to us, I do just want to come out and thank McGovern Group. They did come and meet with our community in April. They spent a couple hours with us. They listened to a lot of comments, concerns, and I feel that it's from those that they revised their plan. And then they also have come back and spent time with our neighbors who abut the property to understand their concerns. And as you saw, they're trying to address that as well. So I just want to make sure that that line of communication continues, because if we can't stop it, we do appreciate that they are trying to be good neighbors at least and take care of the people's homes that abut the property, so.
Thank you.
I don't think I need this. I am Alice McNeil. I'm from Acton. I work 7 days a week. I'm a widow. One of the few privileges I allow myself is to go there. There's 4 wonderful family restaurants that so many of us do. I meet my friends from Nagog. That's such a pleasure. But they're warm, friendly, family restaurants. Where else in town can I go? You offer us nothing. I think it's a wonderful thing for people in town to be able to take their family out to a pleasant, welcoming, home-cooked meal just for fun. That's all I want to say. Don't take all the pleasures of life away from us because of commercialization. We're paying high taxes. I work hard to pay my taxes. All I ask is that we keep some sense of normalcy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Wolf, Sawmill Road. I appreciate the redesign of the park. It is a better plan. I still have some concerns over the current businesses. Like, this does cut the plaza in half, essentially. I believe Beijing Tokyo would be out, probably Anytime Fitness would be out. I don't know if there have been plans made for those businesses to relocate. I'm also concerned about the tenants that have been dealing with this turmoil. I don't know if they were given notice already that they had to move out when we saw the original plan, but that's very hard to run a business when you're not sure if your lease is going to end next month or next year, or if they ever decide to do phase 2. So I would just like to have a little bit more assurance that the businesses in that park are being treated fairly and considerately. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kate Chung, 254 Brown Bear Crossing. Just 2 points. The town as a whole has spent a lot of money on the WAVE project in West Acton, and now Kelly's Corner to make neighborhoods very walkable for the residents and to basically move cars off the road and allow people to bike and walk to destinations. And it seems like we're going backwards with this development, making it less walkable, less destination friendly. And then my second one is a question. With a car dealership, you have the car service center. With the car service center, you do inspections. With inspections, I think one of the things they test is your horn works. So are the residents abutting the property going to hear horns being tested day in, day out, multiple times a day? So that's a question for the dealership. Thank you.
Would you like to answer the question?
It's all inside.
Yeah, I would imagine John will.
Good, John.
Yes, the horns will be tested, but they are all done inside. The building is a closed building. It's going to be an air-conditioned space, so they will not be honked outside, and you won't hear any blaring horns or anything of that nature. And as for the restaurants, I believe Dollar Tree has the longest lease there, and I think it's 10 years with an extension of 5, so there's really nothing going to happen soon unless they move to a new home. So that whole section would be there for a long time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Hashi Chakravarti. I'm at 110 Nonset Path in Acton. So I have a question for McGovern Business. Can you please be explicit, because you're clearly cutting the commercial space here in about half, which tenants are going to be staying and which ones are going? Because clearly they're not all staying. And then how is that process going to be accommodated?
As part of the leases of the tenants of the complex, they include the right to relocate within the complex. Beijing Tokyo would be the restaurant that would need to be moved because Mayori and the Crossroads Cafe will stay along with Frolic and Detour. So those will all stay. As for Beijing, we've offered to relocate them to the As Good As It Gets restaurant location, the old Bickford's. And they are contemplating that because that is, in our opinion, a better location. It's right on the main road. They would have better visibility. So at any rate, that's a consideration for them, and they are looking into that as well. As for Huntington Learning Center, I did mention earlier, they're moving over to the vacant building that's along the water. And Anytime Fitness, I'm not sure what their plans are.
Thank you. I appreciate that information. Also, I wanted to ask a question. So if in the future you make a decision to develop the other half into another dealership, which was part of the original plan, would that require, and this is a select board question, would that require approval, or does it bypass based on current zoning laws?
It would require another round of review.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm Liz Reinhardt, 160 Split Rock. I'm also a member of the Nagog Woods Community Court Board. First of all, I'd like to thank the McGovern Group for their responsiveness to our input. I think, in my mind, this is a revised plan that meets concerns and it's a fair compromise. I also do continue to have concerns about the second phase. And I think that that came out in comments at the Nagog Woods hearing when the McGovern Group met with us. The mall has been neglected by the prior owner. Acton has made efforts towards community development and could be a convener to talk with the community about how best to optimize that second parcel. And so I'd like to suggest that role for the town, at the same time appreciating the compromise reflected. Thank you.
Thank you. It appears to be time to hear from people online now. Thank you. Matt, are there people online with hands raised?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The first one is William Troy. William, you should be able to speak.
We're not hearing you yet.
Hello?
There you go. Yes, we can hear you now.
I share the concerns. I'm in Boxborough. I'm a longtime Acton resident, though, that the restaurants in particular be held safe for at least 5 years before anything happens with the other development. In other words, what happens with the second development?
Thanks.
Thank you.
There's other people that want to speak online.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the next one's a call-in user. You can let us know where they are and where they're from.
We're not hearing you yet. Matt, we're not hearing the voice for now, so let's move on to the next person, then we can see if we can hear the call-in user later.
Of course, Mr. Chair. Next one is Dr. I'm going to apologize, I'm going to say this wrong. They put their hand down. So next one's Leslie Johnson.
Okay, next person.
Leslie Johnson, you should be able to speak.
Can you hear me now?
Absolutely.
Okay. I live on 55 Brook Street, and which is right next to Great Road. And I just find it really sad that Route 2A is turning into an auto mile. And when I think of auto miles, I think of places like Norwood. And what makes me proud about living in Acton is it has kind of a historical, old-fashioned feel, and it has some great features like Nara Park and the Acton Arboretum, and now we have the rail trail, and we've got the West Acton Village, and that's what makes me proud when I think of Acton and living in Acton. I don't feel so good about living on an auto mile. And so I don't know if anything can be done. Maybe the board is right. Nothing can be done about it, but I'd like to express my opinion anyway. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Who's next, Matt?
Is another call-in user? They can let us know who they are. You should be able to speak now.
Hi, it's Tara again, and it's the same call-in user. I just hung up because it wasn't working, so I called back. All right, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Thank you for doing the work to meet with the neighbors and trying to be responsive. I think this is a much better plan, although I still have concerns. Acton doesn't have a new master plan, but it has a master plan. I believe the town can say no if they want to go to the court to protect that area of the town. The select board has to ask the town lawyer how to say no, like we did with the dog park. We asked the lawyer how to say no. We engaged the courts and reduced the project considerably, the proposed project. I love the idea of a condition to remove the development rights to expand the dealership to phase 2. I recommend that whether this gets approved or not, the town engage in a moratorium on the number of dealerships. These are now questions for the applicant. Would Frolic and Detour stay?
I'll allow that. What do you got?
Yes, and we noted a number of times tonight, Frolic. The site is designed around Frolic and Detour staying. That restaurant remains.
Thank you. The next one is the trail to Split Rock. That will remain too?
I assume we're talking about this trail on the south side of the plan, the right side of the plan. Is that right, Mr. Chair? Yes. Yes.
Great. Looks like you're planning to take down mature trees. I'm very much opposed to that, but I don't need to ask a question about that. The dollar store we've talked about. I am very much in favor of David's request for the sidewalk to go straight through the car dealership so they can walk through the windows, past the windows. So it's a straight line as opposed to having to walk all the way around. Either way, I'd like to have trees along it or a nicer walk. I'd like solar canopies over the parked cars. And for the car parking spaces that are for drivers as opposed to just parking cars for the dealership, I hope there'll be shade trees between the cars. And then my last question before I make my comment is a question for the town, which I don't want answered tonight, or unless you can. How much tax revenue will be lost by the loss of the restaurants, because the town gets tax revenue from restaurants? So in summary, I love that you plan to leave the West Building and agree with Miles that if you can incorporate stores and restaurants, if that's what he was talking about, into the main dealer building, so you have a nice walk along and it doesn't look like a mall, an auto mall. It looks like a shopping plaza. And by the way, there's a Subaru dealer here. Then you have restaurants for people to walk past and they will get to look at your cars. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Matt, we still have another person?
Yes, this is another call-in user. The number ends in 2170. You should be able to speak.
We're not hearing you, 2170. Do you want to try again?
You're still muted. You need to unmute.
And what magical key combination unmutes a phone?
*9.
*9. Try *9. Maybe we can hear you then. Oh, great.
*6.
*6. Okay.
*6.
Solving another technical issue. We're 3 for 3 tonight. Go ahead. Oh, that wasn't 2170 telling us about *6.
Actually, they just muted again. They were unmuted.
Oh. Try again. Try one of those *6s and then we'll hear you. Okay. Go ahead.
Are you asking 9923 to talk?
Yes, please.
Okay. Dan Klein, I'm at 537 Old Stone Brook. Most of what I've had to say has been said, and I don't want to waste time repeating it, but let me just emphasize, the mall at Nagog Park provides a multitude of vibrant retail, culinary, and other businesses that have really served us well and loyally over the years. And I would be absolutely devastated if in the long term, they ended up having to go. I've lived here since almost the beginning of Nagog Woods, and this has really become a neighborhood to me and my family. And I really hope that the dealership becomes a very good neighborhood citizen. And I'll leave it at that.
Thanks so much. No more. Okay. So we've gotten public comment, we've had questions and comments from the board, and we've heard a presentation from the developers. Are there any of those three parties that have anything last to say before we move on? Any last comments from the board? Yes, Alyssa.
Thank you. I just have a couple of things that I would like to have answered. One is for not only the board, but the public, this question of the difference between site plan special permit and site plan review, because it very clearly says on the agenda for tonight that this hearing is for a site plan special permit. So I think that's confusing for a lot of people. And the second one is I'd like some legal advice on whether or not we can condition no phase 2, no changes to that mall portion that's remaining, because I do recall looking at I think it was 1985 site plan special permit, that was conditioned on no further expansion or subdividing, and that was overturned by the most recent site plan special permit that's in place now. So obviously it could be changed by another board in the future. But I am a little concerned about some of the things that I've heard tonight and also read in memos. Mr. Bobrowski, when he introduced the project, said that they're going to be proceeding incrementally. And that tells me that there are more than, just this one step. In the planning memo, We read that the western portion of the site is now proposed to remain at this time. So I think that we need to answer everybody's questions about what is going to happen after the Dollar Tree lease and lease renew option runs out, and whether or not this board can condition anything to prevent a change.
That seems like just the sort of thing we'd want to hear about. So let's make sure we hear about it before our next hearing. Any other final comments or questions? No. Then we need to move. Oh, yes, at least one more.
I just want to add one point about Shiva Bazaar, the grocery store. I just retired from teaching in Northborough. And one of my families, there's a very large Indian community in the Shrewsbury, Worcester area. One of my families said to me when I moved to Acton, "Oh, I know where you're moving to. We drive to the grocery store there." So if people from the Worcester area are driving to Acton, and I'm sure they're not alone, I have friends who live in Westford as well as Chelmsford that make use of that particular store because it carries items that are not typically found in your normal grocery store or found at a better price than you would find at, say, Whole Foods. So I just wanted to add that it's not just Acton that's affected by this. Thank you.
Thanks. Very quickly.
It just occurred to me, I forgot to mention, it sure would solve a lot of problems if the service department were moved up the hill a little bit. I mean, there's at the multi-user warehouse space that probably would be convertible. I think it would require a zoning variance. But getting the service department off the site would go a long way to freeing up both space and reducing annoyance value.
Thanks, Miles. We do need to talk about continuing this hearing because we have, more plans to look at and more questions. Dean was considering the notion of a September continuation. Do you have a particular date in mind, or the keeper of our dates? Can you remind me of our September meetings? I think we have 2 scheduled. We have 2 September meetings planned. What's the second one? 11 and 18, okay. Or is it the 25th? No?
It's the 18th.
It's the 18th, yeah, okay, thanks. So usually when we have a continuation, as I recall, we need the okay of the applicant as well. So how does that look, September 18?
So Attorney Bobrowski is consulting with McGovern Motors.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, it would occur to us that if we could make some progress on things that aren't really going to change, for example, the traffic study that was prepared by MDM, it might be profitable to have a July meeting. Understand completely the board's desire to have a free August. That's pretty common in my world, and I hope in yours. That would put us in September for our second meeting. But we could work with staff to develop an easy-to-assemble agenda for a July meeting, end of the month perhaps.
Well, let me understand the will of the board. Dean, you brought this notion up. What are you thinking about the potential of a July meeting? The concern you mentioned before was that a lot of people are out of town and it would be hard to get full public participation at a July meeting.
Yeah, I believe, and I'll rely on Lisa to correct me, I believe in July, are we only scheduled for one? What are the dates? 10 and 24. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that, if you want to have an intermediary meeting on one of those dates, that would be okay. But I think it's important to make sure that if we have another meeting beyond that, that we have it in September when more members of the public are available. So it all depends on how much information they're going to have ready between now and then, and how much time the planning staff is going to have to deal with it, and any new stuff coming in.
So the 10th would be too soon for us, for staff.
Pardon me?
The 10th would be too soon, so the 24th would be, would, if a board wants to do one in July, the 24th would be preferred.
Other thoughts? David?
Yeah, I'm actually wondering whether we really had a meeting scheduled for the 24th. That's not on my list, but I could have made a mistake. But I was possibly planning to be away because there was no meeting. But also, I'm wondering if it's worthwhile to meet without a complete plan set, right? It doesn't, unless McGovern is going to have a complete plan set by a couple weeks before that, I don't see the point in meeting in July, right? Because all the questions that I had, I'm not going to know the answers to until we have the complete plan set. So if we met again in July, I would just ask all the same questions again.
Yeah, okay, so.
We do think that a new plan set would probably not be reviewable. It might be ready by the 24th, but it probably wouldn't have had a peer review.
Yeah. So for that reason and for the public participation reason, I'm inclined to recommend that we wait till September so that we can have full public involvement. If you guys are okay with that, we'll do the paperwork for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great.
May I ask one question?
Yeah, please.
I mean, if there was concern about the time, is there any reason we can't have it on September 11th?
Dean, you were the one suggesting the later September meeting rather than the earlier one. Did you have a?
Well, I
reason for that?
think that's close to some people's vacation time. It's certainly in the midst of my vacation time.
Well, let's not have this during your vacation time.
But we do have, the remote participation or whatever is, so I
So you're
would-
not going to be on a mountaintop? You'll be somewhere near Wi-Fi?
Probably, yeah.
Probably.
So I would defer to the rest of the board, either the 11th or the 18th.
There's only a week difference.
Yeah. Any preferences from other board members between the 11th or the 18th? No? Okay.
Is the 11th a legal holiday?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, it's a sad day, but it's not a holiday. So we're now suggesting September 11. Okay?
That'd be workable for us. We'll have the plan ready, and we'll hope that it'll be peer reviewed by then. And we'll present traffic that information that evening as well.
Okay. Lisa, how does that work on our schedule? So that's okay? Okay. So if we were to make a motion, what time would you suggest we put in that motion for the next hearing? 7:10, that's our standard starting time for the first hearing. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion about 7:10 and September 11?
Mr. Chair, I move that we continue this hearing until September 11th, 2023 at 7:10 in this room.
Second.
Okay, it's been made and seconded. Any final comments on this motion? No, let's find out who's in favor. All in favor, please say aye or yes.
Aye.
That looked unanimous to me. Did I get that right? Were there any noes or abstentions? No. Okay, yes, that's unanimous. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in a couple months.
And enjoy the 2 months between now and then.
Yes. And thanks to all the public who participated. It was really helpful to hear all the comments. Okay, we got to 9:30. That's not bad. Let's continue with our next agenda item, which is approving the FY24 short and long-term goals. So we met, we came up with goals, we voted on them, we came up with a list, it's in our packet. The thing that was unique about the process this time was that we came up with a large number of short-term goals. So I constructed a possible motion that acknowledged the large number of goals that we came up with. It should be in our packet. So whoever finds that first, feel free to read it out loud. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, okay, there we go. So here's a motion for discussion by the board. Move that the Select Board adopt the FY 2024 short and long-term goals as printed, with the understanding that there are a larger number of short-term goals than in previous years. The board understands that there may be too many goals to accomplish in one year, and we are committed to periodically reviewing the list, and as the level of resources required for each goal is better understood, we may remove some goals from the short-term list or reduce their scope. Let's say I made that motion. Would anyone second it?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we can have a discussion about that. Any thoughts about that motion or about the goals? Alyssa?
I just wanted to bring up that I attended last Friday's Economic Development Committee meeting, and they discussed our goals, and also in a future meeting, they will be discussing their own committee's goals, informed by the Select Board goals. They did have a suggestion, which I thought was a very good one, that it would help the boards and committees, but also the public, to see the underpinnings of those goals published rather than just the single sentence, so that people know, what strategies and tactics that the town is using to sort of provide the basis for those goals. That doesn't preclude us approving them tonight, but maybe the five of us could tackle, a short blurb that could be later published. Maybe each one of us doing that on whichever goal was submitted by the individual board member.
Thanks. I also am thinking that if it's possible, Mr. Manager, could we put the goals up on the screen?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, good luck. Or David can do it.
This is a loaner computer.
Oh, okay.
So it's not working the way it should.
Okay, let's let David do it. Other thoughts about the goals or the process? Okay. Any concerns about the motion that would acknowledge the large number of goals? Mr. Charter?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable motion, and it's certainly consistent with what we discussed over in the library, that, it's a lot of work. And I think we all acknowledge that, we're really pushing the staff on this because the staff is going to be doing most of the work here. So I think that's a reasonable motion and, reasonable consideration that, we might have to back off on these things, and if not formally cut them off the list, just sort of acknowledge that there's some pieces of business that are not going to be handled.
The other piece I heard from you, Alyssa, was that at a future meeting, we could discuss how to provide more information about these goals. Am I saying that right? Sort of the parts, the thinking that went into them, and our thoughts about, what these mean longer than a sentence?
Yes, I think specifically some of the goals were carried over from prior years. Some of them came from town staff, some of them came from public comment or town meeting. So I think that spelling that out in a document for the public and volunteers on boards and committees would be useful to help them understand, where did these goals come from?
Well, I'm happy to commit to making sure that shows up on a future agenda with some, with some thought beforehand so that we can have something to work with. So we have a motion on the table. and it's seconded. Any final thoughts about that motion before we go ahead and vote on it?
I was ready to second it. I'll second.
Okay. It's been seconded twice now, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. So why don't we check to see about whether whether individuals want to say yes or aye to the motion. All those in favor, please say yes or aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say no. Any abstentions? No, okay, that's unanimous. We got a set of goals and we've got a statement about them. Thank you. Next, we have approved board and committee reappointments. So this is the result of the annual process that the VCC goes through to ask everyone who's about to be due to have their terms run out if they want to be reappointed. They heard from most people and got this table that's in our packet. I have one bit of updated information to potentially change this a tiny bit. Under Cemetery Commission, there's a person listed named Dana Snyder Grant, who I should disclose is my partner, who actually does want to be reappointed to the Cemetery Commission. So that would change the did not respond there on the first page to a yes. Other than that, are there other changes that people know about? David?
So I just wanted to comment here on the process. I don't remember doing it this way in the past. And I think this is a little, I'll say, wrong from my point of view, because just because someone wants to be reappointed doesn't mean that they should. There could be other people that have been considered or something like that. I don't like taking this list directly. I would have liked the liaisons resubmitting everybody's name and that being used for the sources of the list, just as a comment going forward. And my second concern here is there are names on this list where the people said do not respond. When we take our vote, are they going to be reappointed or not? Right? So I'm really concerned that it's not clear what we're voting on here, because some say, Dean, I'll give you two examples here. There's a line in for two people in committee that I'm liaison to. One says did not respond. The other one says did not respond. David Martin reports positive contact. When we vote, is one of those being reappointed and one not? I mean, I know what I would like to do, but I'm concerned that it's not clear.
Well, so in the particular case of that committee, I would appreciate your recommendation on who should be reappointed. And we can make that part of the motion.
Okay, so, but that's not the only one in that consideration. There's one, like the Green Advisory Board has one that says did not respond. Andrea reports positive contact. What does that mean?
So in that case, I happen to know, since that's the board that I'm a liaison to, that what Andrea heard back from Mary is that she would like to get reappointed.
Right, so, but I'm just concerned, what's our motion going to be here? Is the motion going to be to reappoint everybody who's a yes in the third column or reports positive contact in the fourth column, right? So, or are we going to list the names? Are you going to read the names that you think are? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be picky, but we need to be clear who we're reappointing and who we're not reappointing. That's my own.
Yes. Well, since there's only two that say report positive contact, let's talk about each one of them. So for the DEIC, for Diane Randolph-Jones.
She does want to be reappointed.
She does want to be reappointed, so let's make sure that that's a yes. She's on page 2, under the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission. That would be a yes. And for the Green Advisory Board, I know that Mary Smith would like to be reappointed, so that would be a yes as well. So that would mean that the motion would be that everyone where it says yes or where it says in the fourth column positive contact would be also a yes.
Fine, thank you so much.
Yeah. You're also raising another point, which is about the process. And I agree, there's a risk of an issue here where we do have a policy that if there are people that want to join boards, but the boards are full, that this is the time for that to be considered. And I don't have an answer yet from the VCC on whether there actually are people who would like to be appointed to one of these boards that would be, that doesn't have an opening. So I think it's an important question we have to talk about.
Yes, so I would just like the process to be to go back to the liaisons, and the liaisons propose who goes forward, because I think there are people, I don't think the people who are being reappointed should necessarily go to the front of the line. I mean, I appreciate everybody's contributions on every board and committee, but there are certain associates who might want to be appointed to full members first, and the people who want to be reappointed, they go become an associate, maybe, right? And I think the liaison has to work out those details for each committee. So I think they're too complicated for the five of us to deal with. So anyway, that's just my input for a future process.
So I guess the question is, well, why don't we get Alyssa's thoughts in on this too before we talk further about it?
Thank you. That's a good idea because I want to follow up on what David just said. I did hear or read from the VCC that it's challenging for them to keep track of these expiring appointments, and they are reaching out and maybe not hearing from people and have to follow up and chase people down. So since there are only 5 of us, then it seems to make sense that we change the process so that the VCC, Volunteer Coordinating Committee, reaches out to the liaison to let the liaison know which committee members' terms are expiring, and then the liaison can be responsible for looking to see, are there associate members who are ready to be promoted to a full member? And as David suggested, a full member, if they're interested in staying on the committee, would move then to an associate position. And I haven't had any communication directly from the Volunteer Coordinating Committee as to applications that have come in for spots. I mean, it's it's one thing to have a list of who's already gone through the process and been interviewed or had their interview waived and been recommended by the Volunteer Coordinating Committee. But, it's hard to get yourself into a seat before somebody's actually gotten up from the seat. So I think it would be nice to have a process that invites more people to come forward and be confident that they have a chance to become a member, especially when there are boards and committees where the folks have been, the same volunteers who I appreciate so much, but have been there for decades.
Are there thoughts on my left side here about this question?
Well, going back some years ago when DeRay Hunter was on the board, he got the select board to agree to a policy where people got to serve 2 terms, and then they were sunsetted unless there was nobody else. With the idea is that, you won't generate new volunteers unless people know there's actually a slot to be filled. Mm-hmm. So I think, maybe later on this year, we should talk about that, reinstituting that and kind of freshening up some of these committees. Because we do have some people, they're great sources of history, but we've got some people that have been on some of these boards for 20, 25 years. Mm-hmm. So it's time to, reach out to the newer people moving into town, being a little more inclusive. But I think probably not a discussion to start at 10 o'clock at night.
So it seems like we have a couple of alternatives. One would be we affirm that whoever's on the boards now continues to be on those boards until our next meeting. And then at that next meeting, between now and that next meeting, we all reach out to the VCC and our boards and affirm this list or introduce alternate names. Or, that's one alternative, or we make sure to talk about this before the next appointment period. And I'm wondering whether people have the time and energy to, look at this now, or whether we should wait. Dean?
I think we wait, and moving forward in the future, we look at changing it rather than, tackling something like this the first week in July and trying to track people down.
Other thoughts about that? I see a nod from Alyssa and David.
Yeah, I agree with Deanie, because I think also we have the complication that these people are supposed to expire. We'd have to figure that out. I think we should go forward with this list, with the motion that you proposed earlier, and that we look on improving the process moving forward.
Great. So let's do that. So let's see, does someone want to construct a motion that matches what we've just said?
I just want to add one little thing.
Oh, good.
And it wasn't until this list that I knew that a ZBA member was not continuing on. So it was helpful in that regard.
Yeah, this was definitely, important information. But I think what I'm hearing is that next year, this should be the first step in the process. And then there's an additional step where we talk with the chair, or we'll figure out what that process is. But we clearly have more that we can contribute to this process. David?
I move that we reappoint all the people in our list in the packet that have expressed a yes to an interest in reappointment, or have responded positively by individual contact, as noted in the list.
Second.
Okay, that motion's been made and seconded. Any other comments on that? Okay, my only comment is, yes, indeed, I'll try to figure out how to have a more robust process next time around. And all those in favor of this motion, please say yes or aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm confident that I heard 5 ayes. Yes, thank you. Okay, I'm going to find my agenda again. Okay, here it is. Presentation of FY24 Health Insurance Trust updates. I think this is here because of our liaison to the Health Insurance Trust. Talk to us.
Thank you. So just for the public, the Health Insurance Trust provides health insurance for employees of the town and the regional school district and their retirees. And each year, the trust negotiates rates with providers of group health insurance. The trust is self-insured, and the 5 trustees are the treasurers of the town and school district, a select board member, me, and a finance committee member and a school committee member. And in the past few months, the Health Insurance Trust conducted a request for proposals for a new consultant. The consulting services had not been put out to bid for a number of years. And at the June 8th meeting, trustees selected A.J. Gallagher and Company effective July 1st. This consultant has experience managing multi-town groups. And the trust also contracted with Cook and Company for a part-time service representative, and the contract with Borgatti and Harrison for treasury and accounting services were renewed. A reinsurance quote from Blue Cross Blue Shield was accepted with no increase over the current year's premium. The data breach at Harvard Pilgrim has delayed our claims report, so we don't have the complete current information, but claims this year have been higher than forecast. So the trust has instituted changes in pharmacy benefits as well as administration, both of which we hope to will lower costs for the upcoming fiscal year. An evaluation of other steps that would improve the financial health of the trust will take place over the next 3 months. And the trustees at the June 8th meeting elected Steve Noon as chair and Andrew Schwartz as clerk for the upcoming year.
Thanks so much. It's been the Health Insurance Trust has been a driver of our increases in costs, so it's really great to keep the information understood. So I appreciate it a lot. Any questions for Alyssa? No? Okay. Accept donation from the Acton Garden Club valued at $2,000 toward the renovation of the oval garden in front of Town Hall. Mr. Manager, you got anything to say about that, like a picture or something?
I believe there was a picture of what's proposed in the packet. I do know that the Garden Club is represented here.
Oh, yay.
Tonight. And if they wanted to, if there's any questions, I can answer them, or I'm sure they'd be happy to. But I think the Garden Club has a tradition of maintaining that garden in front of Town Hall for decades. When it was last renovated, it was the Garden Club that did it. And now they have some big plans to do it again. Now that we've finished the construction project out front, they're planning to go through some permitting processes that are required to do a fountain, which is being proposed. Most likely a fountain that won't have water in it, but I'm still hoping that it does. Either way, it'll be beautiful. And yeah, this is a formal step that the board would have to take to not just accept the gift, but at the same time acknowledge that it wants or approves the plan, I guess, is a way to put it. So I don't know if the Garden Club wants to add any context.
The floor is yours if you want it. Oh, look, there's a pretty picture on the screen now. That's good. Mm-hmm. You go ahead and press that button and say a little bit. You could say who you are, and you could tell us a little bit about the plan.
You go first. All right. Well, good evening. We're happy to be here. We're excited about this project. It's something that's been in the making over the past year. Linda O'Neill is my partner in crime, putting together this plan and running a committee of Garden Club members. There were 8 of us who worked on this project. So there's a bit of history behind it. Linda has a couple details she could share about that.
As John mentioned, traditionally the garden's been done by the Garden Club. Anniversary, the last was the 40th anniversary of the Garden Club. Next year will be 90 years that the Garden Club has been in existence. So this would be a nice way to recognize the club also. And what she's referring to is we have thought about having a fountain in the middle of the planting, rather than so many shrubs. We have so many shrubs out there now, and they've gotten all overgrown, and you can't even see the front of the town hall anymore. And now that the traffic is going to be coming, and we stop right in front of the town hall, and you look over, and all you see is this big
Suddenly the garden is a focal point.
Really. So we have a nice plan for low-growing things that love full sun, and the exhaust has been a problem over the years with affecting the plantings that are there and so forth. So the feature that we would like to have there is a Victorian fountain that was originally belonged to the Jenks family in Acton, and I had to tell our town manager who Porter Jenks was. So the fountain was given to me by Mabel Jenks, Porter Jenks' wife, when she was breaking up housekeeping, and she was my Girl Scout leader and my Sunday school teacher, and for some reason she thought I might, well, other than I'm a...
You earned it somehow.
I earned it somehow. Well, she knew I was probably interested because of, I grew up in Acton and knew the family so well. So we have this fountain that can be, as John mentioned, can be made to be a water fountain. We had originally thought that we would just put succulents in it and things that would be not a lot of maintenance, because the maintenance is a big issue. Getting people to check on what needs to be watered and what needs to be changed and so forth is a big issue. So it would be keeping with the town hall, the history of the town hall, and the new plantings will be more in keeping with the new paint in the town hall. The last plan
The
was
color scheme.
the color
Yeah.
scheme
Nice.
of the town hall.
Yeah.
There's a Cypress there now that's kind of yellow, and it
Mhm.
really doesn't look well with the yellow in the building, so.
Mhm.
So with that in mind, and there would be one stone that we were able to get from the stone yard up in Narrow Park that we would like to place on the town hall side with just with a plaque that designates that this is a gift of the Acton Garden Club, which there is a small plaque there now from the planting for the 40th anniversary, so.
We have reached out to the Historic District Commission, so they can give us some feedback on this. Of course, that's per your approval of the gift, but they're prepared to start evaluating it and giving us some feedback about it.
Great. There might be comments and questions from members of the board. Let's why don't we go along the board here. Dean?
Well, it is, you know, I really have to acknowledge once again the tremendous amount of work the Garden Club has done forever in maintaining these gardens and establishing them, and thanking them for that on behalf of the board. And I think, yeah, it's more than past due time to straighten out the Ellipse Garden. And I think, you know, the Victorian fountain would be great, whether it's operational or not, because this is a Victorian town hall, not a colonial town hall. And I'd be prepared to offer a motion when that time is appropriate.
Thank you. Fran, any thoughts, questions?
I'm excited for this, and I think it's going to look beautiful. What is the reluctance of having it become a real fountain with water? Just the work, is it?
The issue of the water, you know, the water issues in town. We have water restrictions.
Water conservation concerns?
Yeah.
If it's reconstituted
Right.
and reused?
Well, it can be, yes.
Yeah. So,
That was the only, concern that we've heard. Well, gee, we have such a restricted water use right now. How can we justify, how can the Garden Club justify a working fountain? But that's the only.
even if the water is recycled?
It would be recycled.
Right.
It would be put in a basin.
Right.
And the pump would be in the basin that would recycle the water. So the only issue would be keeping the
You have to
reservoir filled.
refill the water.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
it evaporates
It
over time.
evaporates.
You do have to
Okay.
have some mechanism for refilling it, whether it's hauling buckets or plumbing it to automatically refill.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm just an enthusiastic supporter of this. I think it's going to look great. And thank you so much for being willing to, take all this design work and then the implementation.
Yeah, thank you very much for doing this. It'll be great to see that rejuvenated. I just had a question do you know whether your proposed species here are native species?
They aren't specifically native species. What we struggled a lot with what to choose, and ultimately, we decided to actually replicate species that were chosen for the library planting, which the Garden Club did in 2004 for our 70th anniversary. We had our best minds, horticultural minds, put to this question about what to put in, and
So
that's how we arrived with these choices.
if I read between the lines, is that you think that it's not essential that they be native species?
Yeah, because honestly, we want things that will be sustained and will thrive there. We've gone through many, many experiments with different plant material over the years. Some have succeeded, some haven't. So what we have planted over there has succeeded in most part. So that was really I think the primary consideration.
Thank you.
And it is such a brutal environment out there. It's brutal, full sun all day long. It does catch the water because there is a slope, but not a lot. And cars going by there all day long. It really, that was our big concern, getting something that would last and still look good year-round. Thank you.
I just want to say congratulations on 90 years. I know that you two have not been part of the Garden Club for that long, but that's a big milestone, and I appreciate all of the work. I'm glad somebody is thinking of this and has a great plan to take care of it. Thanks.
So Dean, about that motion you had queued up.
Hey, I'll move that the board votes to accept the donation from the Acton Garden Club and the design as shown, and authorize them to proceed with getting any other approvals from the Historic District Commission, and to install said garden when the time is right.
There might be a second out there.
Second.
Okay, any last comments or? No? All those in favor, please say aye or yes.
Aye.
Okay, I heard an enthusiastic yes, so please proceed. Yeah, with our deep appreciation. Okay, then we have a little bit of business left over from town meeting. Authorize the chair to send letters to state delegation to request approval of the voting-related home rule petition warrant articles. This is just a standard next step with home rule petitions. Any questions about that or concerns? How about a motion? David?
I move to authorize the chair to send letters to the state delegation, to our state delegation, to request approval of voting-related home rule petitions from this year's warrant articles.
Thanks. Is there a second?
Go ahead. Second.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions about that? No? All those in favor, please say yes or aye. Yes. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, Dean's abstaining. Would you like a moment to say anything about why?
No, well, just that as an individual, I stood in opposition to some of these, and I feel it was hypocritical if I now voted in favor of it. I remain opposed to at least one of them, but recognize the will of the board and the will of town meeting.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Calendar. I'm going to read through the consent items, and if any board member wants them held for further discussion or questions, let me know. Approve and authorize town manager to sign the interagency mutual aid agreement for Acton Police Department. Approve meeting minutes, June 5 and 12, 2023. Appoint Nina Pickering Cook as town council with a term to end June 30th, 2024. Appoint Tack Palmer and Nelba Maldonado as animal control officers with a term to end June 30, 2026. Appoint Michelle Holland as an associate member to the Zoning Board of Appeals with a term to end on June 30, 2026. Appoint Robert Ferrara as a full member from associate to the Historical Commission with a term to end on June 30, 2025. Appoint John Gianetto as an associate member to the Commission on Disabilities with a term to end on June 30, 2026. And approve a one-day alcoholic beverage license for these three fine folks: Suresh Thandapani, Nara Park Picnic Pavilion on June 30th, the Middlesex West Chamber of Commerce, Nara Park, August 8th, and Nisha Rajagopal, Nara Park Picnic Pavilion, July 9th, all in 2023. A motion to approve?
I move to approve consent items 9 through 16 inclusive.
Okay, a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say yes or aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's a unanimous approval. Thank you. Then we have our cool meeting evaluation. Let me see if I have any comments that I might want responses to. Let's see. I think the public hearing went well. I was relatively unclear on timing of the comments because I forgot to bring my little sand timer, so I'm looking forward to doing that in the future. Happy to have any comments about how that worked out in the absence of timers. What else? No, I thought we discussed I thought it was good to have a discussion about the board and committee reappointments to raise the issues. I'm a little disappointed we didn't just fix it right there, but I agree with the will of the board that it made sense to just go ahead and fix this next year. That's all the comments I had. So other meeting comments would include either, things that worked well that we'd like to learn from, or things that didn't work well that we'd like to learn from, or follow-ups that people would like to make sure we make, things that should belong on future agendas that came up at this meeting. So why don't we just start at one end and travel up?
Thank you. I think the hearing went very well, and I think that it was pretty important that you introduced to the public a request for them to keep their comments brief in order to allow everybody who wanted to speak a chance, and also to not repeat what had been said before. So I think that that really helps guide the public, and it should be something that happens at every hearing for folks to be reminded, and also if they're here for the very first time for a hearing, they know how to make that go smoothly and not take a lot of time, not take an inordinate amount of time.
Thank you. David, any comments about the meeting?
I think things went well. It's really hard to know how much introduction to do for the meetings. I mean, some people think they ask us, why we're putting an auto dealership there, but it's not our choice to do that. And, so it's really difficult to know how much background, but I agree with Alyssa that the background you gave was good. If you want me to time things when you forget your egg timer, I could potentially use my phone or my computer to time them. I wonder if someone makes some kind of little appliance with a, we just tap it to reset it and it shows some light when it's 15. Well, the egg timer is good. The egg timer, though, you can be stuck in the middle if someone makes a short comment. Anyway, I'm just wondering if someone makes a little thing that can sit with a little light on it or something.
We have those things at town meeting, but that's pretty elaborate.
Yeah, that's pretty elaborate.
But it exists.
They're remote controlled too.
Okay.
I was thinking of something that you or one of us next to you actually just taps when someone starts to speak, that resets it back to 0 or whatever. Anyway, that's just a.
Thank you. Jim. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks. The other thing that came up for me, just remembering it now, was the questions about, what conditions we can make, because there were some conditions suggested that we should get some feedback on. So I'm looking forward to getting that feedback from planning. Any thoughts?
No, I think the meeting went well. The public hearing was semi-painless. It's a frustrating decision to have to make. The town doesn't own the property, so it's difficult. And I think they did a great job of revising the plan. I think that they do. I think they really considered a lot of input they got from neighbors. And I think that made the public hearing better.
Dean, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was, again, as far as the hearing went, it went quite well, I thought. It was certainly useful having the planning director here to give the preliminary comments. I think the general public has a unrealistic expectation about the power of the Board of Selectmen, or Select Board, I should say. We're governed by so many rules and regulations. We're really constrained on a lot of these things. And I think people are disappointed when they hear that, because they expect we can do a whole lot more than we can. So the other item that I'd suggest is, as far as in citizen comments, you know, that certainly the 92 Willow Street issue, you know, is a heart-rendering situation. But I think, you know, some better control where we had all, each one of us had received exactly the same letter that was read by the tenant. You know, it went in great detail, but it, you know, probably didn't need to hear all of it because we've all received that, we've all read it, and we know that there's a lot going on in the background of all this that, you know, that we couldn't respond to. So it's a very tough situation to try to control where the conversation is going to go in public comments, but, you know, I understand that. But, you know, if we've already got, you know, a multi-page written document in front of us, we probably don't need to have it read to us again.
Appreciate that. Oh, was it okay to ask if you wanted to say anything about your abstention? Because it's a habit I'd like us to get into, is if someone hasn't said anything and then, you know, votes against something or abstains, it seems like I'd like to sort of give an opportunity to have that said out loud, but was that okay?
I was certainly not offended by it, and,
Okay.
you know, I was contemplating up front saying I'm going to abstain because of such and such a reason. So either before the fact or the after the fact, yeah, I did not feel intimidated.
Great, good. We'll keep that up. That's the meeting eval. One more motion.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning, please say yes or aye.
Aye.
That's everyone. We're done.
Forgot to say aye.